On a sweltering June morning, an ancient manuscript held secrets that could rewrite medical history. The New York Times headline that caught my eye read, "Medicine's Hidden Roots in an Ancient Manuscript." Beneath it was a photo of an open book, its pages yellowed and marked with dark lines of text and vibrant red initials. The story began with a sense of intrigue. Grigory Kessel, a scholar, held the ancient manuscript for the first time, and its animal hide pages, over 1,000 years old, felt strangely familiar. The manuscript was a palimpsest, a term for a book where the original text has been scraped off and replaced with new writing. In this case, Syrian monks in the 11th century had repurposed a 9th century Syriac copy of a medical treatise by Galen of Pergamon, a renowned Greco-Roman physician, to create a hymnal. The original text, however, had not been entirely erased. Parchment made from animal skin absorbs the inks used by scribes, leaving faint traces of the original writing. To uncover the hidden text, scientists used a technique called spectral imaging. This involves photographing each page at extremely high resolution with different types of light, which helps reveal the underlying ink. Computer algorithms then enhance these images to make the original text more visible. This process allowed researchers to restore and read Galen's On the Mixtures and Powers of Simple Drugs, a crucial medical treatise that had been lost for a millennium. The manuscript's journey is as mysterious as its contents. It disappeared for centuries after being recycled in the 9th century, resurfaced in a book sale in the 1920s, and vanished again into a private collection in Germany. In 2002, it was purchased by an anonymous collector who, unlike previous owners, decided to make it available to the public. Thanks to this collector's generosity, the manuscript was digitized and uploaded to an online platform, where it can now be accessed by anyone with a computer and internet connection. This story highlights the unique intersection of ancient craftsmanship and modern technology. Digital tools have transformed the way we study and understand medieval manuscripts. For the first time, these priceless artifacts are accessible to a global audience, allowing us to explore their cultural and historical significance in unprecedented detail. Despite their age, medieval manuscripts are not just relics of the past. They are complex and multifaceted objects that played a crucial role in shaping medieval culture. Unlike modern printed books, each manuscript is a unique creation, hand-copied and often beautifully illustrated. This individuality means that no two manuscripts are exactly alike, and each one offers a distinct perspective on the works they contain. In the modern world, manuscripts are often seen as primitive precursors to printed books, but this view overlooks their true value. Each manuscript is a product of a rich, urban microculture, where artisans worked together to create books that were more than just texts. They were multimedia works of art, combining text, images, and decorative elements to convey meaning in ways that are lost in modern critical edition. For example, a page from the Grandes Chroniques de France, a historical manuscript from the late 14th century, shows how text and image work together to shape political perceptions. The page depicts Edward III of England performing homage to Philip VI of France, a symbolic act that emphasized the legitimacy of the French crown. The text and rubrics surrounding the image provide additional context, reinforcing the political message. This kind of interplay between text and image is a hallmark of medieval manuscript culture, reflecting how these books were used to convey complex ideas and narratives. The ease with which scribes could alter manuscripts also reflects the presentist nature of medieval culture. Manuscripts were not static documents, but living texts that could be updated to reflect contemporary views. This fluidity allowed scribes to rewrite history, as seen in the case of Charles V's copy of the Grandes Chroniques, where scribes revised the text to support the French claim to the throne during the 100 Years' War. By understanding the unique nature of medieval manuscripts, we can gain a deeper appreciation of the cultural and historical contexts in which they were created. These ancient books are not just historical artifacts. They are windows into a world where text, image, and artistry combine to shape the way people understood and interacted with their world. The way we understand the pages of medieval manuscripts can be quite different from how we think about books today. Back then, a manuscript was not just a collection of words. It was a dynamic space where the scribe's hand, the artist's brush, and the reader's mind all came together to create something unique. This space, which we can call the manuscript matrix, was full of possibilities and interactions. Imagine the parchment page as a living, breathing entity. It wasn't just a flat surface for writing. It was a place where different elements, words, images, and even the scribe's own thoughts intermingled. Scribes and artists often included images, known as illuminations, which were more than just pretty pictures. These images were integral to the text, enhancing its meaning and inviting the reader to engage in a deeper, more interactive experience. The manuscript matrix was a place of radical contingencies, where time, perceptions, and intentions could clash and create new meanings. What the scribe or artist intended might not always align with what the reader perceived. This gap between intention and perception was a space where the unconscious could reveal itself, much like the pulsations of the unconscious, described by Jacques Lacan. This means that the manuscript wasn't just a static text. It was a dynamic interplay of verbal and visual elements, each contributing to a larger whole. One of the key aspects of this dynamic space was the layout, or dispositio. The layout wasn't just about arranging words and images. It was about creating a multimedia experience. In a medieval manuscript, every element, whether a letter, a painting, or a decorative border, was crafted by hand, making each one unique. This handmade quality meant that the reader had to engage with the text in a more active way, synthesizing the different elements to understand the overall meaning. This is why it's misleading to think of medieval codices as books in the same way we think of modern printed books. Medieval books were deeply connected to the culture and society of their time. They reflected the natural world and the human place within it. As urbanization and technological advancements changed the way people lived, manuscripts evolved to reflect these changes. For example, the increasing importance of cities and the growth of trade influenced the way manuscripts were produced and used. A famous example of the scribe's world comes from the poet François Villon. In the dead of winter, he described the hardships of writing in a cold, drafty room with a frozen inkwell and a snuffed candle. This vivid image captures the physical and emotional challenges faced by scribes and writers in the Middle Ages. It's a far cry from the romanticized image of a monk in a warm scriptorium, but it reflects the real conditions under which many manuscripts were created. Medieval manuscripts often included self-referential elements, such as images of the scribe or author at work. These images weren't just decorative. They were a way for the creators to assert their presence and importance. For example, in a manuscript of troubadour poetry, a bast-a-page sketch shows a scribe reciting the very poems he is copying. This image not only highlights the scribe's role in preserving oral traditions, but also suggests a sense of loss, as the written text cannot fully capture the experience of live performance. Author portraits in manuscripts were also significant. They often appeared at the beginning of a text or at key points, such as the transition between different authors. These portraits served to authenticate the text and connect it to its origin. For example, in a luxurious manuscript of the Roman de la Rose, the artist Gerard Carey created a dramatic scene showing the dead Guillaume de Loris and the living Jean de Meun, marking the transition from one author to the other. This image not only helps the reader understand the structure of the text, but also underscores the scribe's role in preserving and interpreting the work. In another manuscript of the Roman de la Rose, a miniature painting shows Guillaume de Loris at his writing desk, with Jean de Meun entering from the side. This image marks the point where Jean takes over from Guillaume, a transition that is not explicitly stated in the text for another 6,000 lines. The scribe and artist recognized the importance of this moment and wanted to make it clear to the reader. These examples illustrate the complex and dynamic nature of medieval manuscripts. They were not just collections of words. They were interactive spaces where the scribe, the artist, and the reader all played a part in creating meaning. By understanding the manuscript matrix, we can appreciate the richness and depth of medieval culture and the unique ways in which it was expressed through the written word and image. In the 11th and 12th centuries, books were mostly religious texts like Bibles and ritual volumes, made for churches and noble families. By the 13th century, as more people started reading books written in their own language, a wider range of people became interested in books. This included professionals and merchants living in the cities. However, the nobility still played a big role in supporting the creation of these books. especially the large, beautifully decorated ones. One example of noble patronage is found in a 14th century French book called the Speculum Historiale, Mirror of History, translated from Latin by Jeanne de Vignay for Jeanne de Bourgogne, Queen of France from 1328 to 1348. The frontispiece of this book shows Jeanne instructing Jeanne to translate the Latin text for her son, the future Jeanne II. Jeanne is depicted with a crown, surrounded by her ladies-in-waiting, while Jeanne sits at a desk, carefully translating the text. This scene highlights the importance of patronage, as Jeanne's support enabled the creation of this valuable book. Jeanne de Bourgogne was a lover of books, and encouraged her son to appreciate them as well. She organized translations of important works from Latin and Greek, including those by philosophers, historians, and Christian theologians. Her son, Jean II, continued this tradition, but it was her grandson, Charles V, who saw the potential of using these translations for political purposes. Charles V established the first royal library and commissioned translations of significant works to use as tools of governance, transforming his grandmother's personal interest into a state policy. The frontispiece of the Speculum Historiale also includes a scene from the 13th century, showing St. Louis IX commissioning the original Latin version of the book from the scholar Vincent de Beauvais. This scene is a mirror image of Jeanne's commission, emphasizing the continuity of patronage and the authority it represents. Vincent's work was a compilation of historical episodes meant to teach royal princes and noble heirs about governance. The illustration shows Vincent's writing desk with books and documents, highlighting the complexity of his task. As book production technology advanced in the mid-13th century, Paris became a major center for making parchment books. Vincent de Beauvais's Speculum Historiale was one of several works he compiled, and it became very popular, especially among the French royal family and nobility. The success of these works was partly due to the close ties between the Dominican order, which Vincent belonged to, and the French monarchy. Another example of this patronage is a manuscript produced in 1396 for Louis I d'Orleans, the second son of Charles V. This manuscript, illustrated by the famous artist Perrin Ramayat, continues the tradition of royal and noble support for book production. The frontispiece in this version shows a similar scene to earlier ones, but with a more refined style, reflecting the genealogical connection between St. Louis, Jeanne de Bourgogne, and Louis I d'Orleans. The complexity of manuscript technology allowed authors to compile and organize large amounts of diverse information. For instance, Raoul de Perslez's translation and commentary on Augustine's City of God includes detailed marginal notes and rubrics to guide the reader through the text. This level of organization was only possible with the advanced manuscript techniques of the time. Music also played a significant role in court life and manuscript culture. The Ars Nova, a musical style developed in the early 14th century, featured complex notational schemes and harmonies. This style was popular at the Valois court, and was seen as a symbol of the king's mastery over various disciplines. Christine de Pizan, a contemporary writer, praised Charles V for his proficiency in music and literature, linking these skills to his ability to govern effectively. One of the most complex manuscripts of the period is the Roman de Fauvel, a court satire by Gervais Dubus with music by Philippe de Vitry. This work combines text, music, and illustrations to create a multifaceted critique of court life. The main character, Fauvel, a donkey dressed in royal garb, represents the shallowness and pretension of courtiers. The intricate structure of the Roman de Fauvel mirrors the elaborate etiquette of the court, highlighting the disconnect between the court's refined life and the real world. These examples show how patronage, manuscript technology, and the arts were intertwined in medieval France, influencing both cultural and political life. In the world of medieval manuscripts, the way these books were made and shared tells a lot about the time and place they came from. The manuscript of Le Roman de Fauvel, for instance, created around 1314, reflects the social and political tensions of its era. Gerard Dubus and Philippe de Vitry, the creators of Fauvel, were keen observers of their society, much like the way Walter Benjamin observed 19th century Paris. They saw the moral decay within the Capetian court, which eventually led to the dynasty's downfall and the rise of the Valois. This transition was not smooth, and it sparked a series of political feuds and betrayals that affected France for over a century. The circulation of manuscripts in the late Middle Ages was a dynamic process. Authors and poets were highly aware of each other's work, and this awareness led to a rich exchange of ideas. The Roman de la Rose, for example, had over 250 manuscript copies, and each copy was unique in some way. The scribes and artists who worked on these manuscripts were familiar with each other's styles, and this familiarity often inspired them to create new works that built upon or challenged existing ones. Guillaume de Guileville and Christine de Pizan, for instance, wrote their own works as responses to the Roman de la Rose. Two key aspects of manuscript technology, compilation and illumination, played significant roles in this process. Compilation allowed for the creation of new literary works by combining quotations, allusions, and emulations within a loose narrative framework. This was especially common in allegorical and moral compositions, where the story served as a vehicle for edifying content. The Roman de la Rose was a prime example of this, and its widespread circulation encouraged other poets to create similar works. Illumination, or the decoration of manuscripts with images, also evolved significantly in the 14th century. These images were not just decorative. They often served as critical commentaries on the text. As more versions of important works were produced, scribes and artists tried to differentiate their work by creating unique and visually striking illustrations. This not only made the manuscripts more appealing, but also revealed the artist's awareness of other contemporary works. The visual and graphic elements of manuscripts became a reliable way to determine their date and place of production. The rise of manuscript technology in the 14th and 15th centuries fostered a creative environment where poets, artists, scribes, and readers worked closely together. The multimedia potential of manuscripts, combining text, music, and art, led to the creation of hybrid literary works that were rich and diverse. The production of these manuscripts was a collaborative effort, and the results were vibrant and dynamic, much like a story told in living color. In the modern era, the digitization of medieval manuscripts has opened new avenues for study and research. Projects like the collaboration between the Sheridan Libraries at Johns Hopkins University and the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris have made hundreds of Roman de la Rose manuscripts available online. This has allowed scholars and students to access these valuable artifacts without the risk of damaging the originals. Digital tools have also enabled new research techniques, such as transcription, annotation, and the comparison of different manuscript versions. However, the transition to digital formats has not been without resistance. Some scholars and students argue that digital copies undermine the materiality of the original manuscripts. They fear that the digital artifacts, while closely resembling the originals, cannot fully capture the physical experience of handling the real thing. This resistance is rooted in a long-standing debate about the relationship between the original and the imitation. Historically, this debate has been influenced by religious, philosophical, and aesthetic concerns. For example, Plato argued that images and copies of objects are inherently flawed and can lead to misunderstanding. Despite these concerns, the digitization of manuscripts has also highlighted the importance of traditional methods in manuscript studies. Paleography and codicology, which involve the study of handwriting and the physical structure of manuscripts, have become even more crucial in the digital age. These methods help validate the observations made through large-scale comparison studies and ensure that the digital copies are accurate representations of the originals. The ambivalence toward digital copies of manuscripts reflects a broader tension between tradition and innovation. While digital technology offers new opportunities for research and preservation, it also challenges the way we think about the materiality of the book. The key is to recognize that digital and physical formats can coexist and complement each other, enriching our understanding of medieval manuscripts and the cultures that produce them. Love, as Shakespeare wrote, remains steadfast despite the passage of time and the changes it brings. Similarly, the transmission of medieval manuscripts, like the Roman de la Rose, presents a paradox. How do these works maintain their core identity and narrative structure over centuries, even as they are constantly being rewritten and reimagined by different scribes and artists? In the world of medieval literature, the concept of an original manuscript is elusive. Unlike a painting by Rembrandt which is inseparable from the artist's hand, medieval texts were often transmitted through multiple handwritten copies, each of which could be seen as a unique performance of the work. These performances, like musical interpretations of a score, vary in their details but still convey the essence of the original composition. Take the Roman de la Rose, for example. This famous poem, started by Guillaume de Loris in the early 13th century and completed by Jean de Meun around 1280, exists in numerous manuscript versions. Each version, created by different scribes and artists, offers a slightly different experience. The text might be embellished with colorful illustrations, marginal notes, and decorative elements that reflect the tastes and interpretations of the time. Yet, despite these variations, the core narrative and themes of the Rose remain recognizable. The process of creating these manuscript versions was a collaborative and dynamic one. Scribes and artists, often working in the bustling book, trade centers of medieval cities like Paris, brought their own creativity and skills to the task. They didn't just copy the text, they interpreted it, adding their own glosses and visual elements that enriched the work. This continuous process of recreation allowed the Rose to evolve and stay relevant over the centuries, even as it maintained its fundamental identity. The digitization of these manuscripts, far from threatening their authenticity, actually enhances our understanding of them. Digital images allow scholars and enthusiasts to study these works in unprecedented detail, comparing different versions and tracing the evolution of the text and its illustrations. This comparative perspective reveals the intricate ways in which medieval scribes and artists balanced innovation with tradition, ensuring that the essence of the work endured even as it was constantly being reimagined. In the end, the paradox of manuscript transmission is a testament to the resilience and adaptability of medieval literature. Just as love, in Shakespeare's sonnet, remains unshaken by time's changes, the Roman de la Rose and other medieval works have managed to preserve their core identity while embracing the variations and interpretations of each new generation. This ongoing process of transmission ensures that these works continue to speak to us, even centuries after they were first created.